more and more employees are starting to think about really the impact on their workforce. They're starting to realize that a majority of their workforce are caregivers. And what does that mean? That means that they're being pulled in a million directions and juggling all their work responsibilities and their family responsibilities. It's just too much. It's causing burnout on both ends. And so proactive, progressive employers, I think, are starting to realize this is a bigger and bigger segment of their workforce, and they're starting to put in more benefits, more opportunities to give them that flexibility that they need in order to juggle both roles.
Did you know that in 2020, there were 53 million caregivers in the United States? And by 2025, this number is expected to grow to 62.5 million. 73% of these caregivers also have a job. They are called working caregivers, and they are invisible because they don't talk about their caregiving challenges. Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees, is a podcast that will show you how to support working caregivers. Join Selma Archer and Zach Demopoulos on the Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast as they show you how to support working caregivers.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever and whenever you are calling from. Thank you for joining us here on the Working Caregiver, the Invisible Employee podcast. I'm Zach Demopoulos.
And I'm Selma Archer.
What is happening, Selma?
We've got a lot of exciting things happening this week. So I am so happy to have our guests here with us today. Paul Wynn, who is a caregiver advocate and author. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, Selma. Hello, Zach. It's awesome to be here with you guys. I've been dying to be on your show.
Awesome. We've been dying to have you too.
Yeah.
Again, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us today and talk about this important issue of employee caregiving, not unpaid employee caregiving. So we'll start out by tell us something interesting about where you live.
So that's an interesting question because the area I live in, the Hudson Valley of New York, has so much great history here. I mean, you have FDR's Presidential Library. You have the architecture, Russell Wright's beautiful estate here. But what's really sort of the hub of our community is West Point's campus. Oh. And the military campus is right here. It's a beautiful campus right on the river, has so much great history there. We spend as much time as we can enjoying their football games, go Army, and all their other sports. It's a great, great experience. I highly recommend people come up here and visit during the fall. It's just beautiful.
Awesome. A little cold right now, I hear.
A little cold, but that's okay. We're used to it.
That's wonderful. That's really interesting. It makes me want to come and visit, actually. So we'll get started. Can you start by just sharing your caregiver story with us?
So I'm really proud to be one of the authors of a new book that just came out called The Caregivers Advocate Volume 2. And I had the pleasure of writing Chapter 3, which is called Surviving the Sandwich Generation Years. And the sandwich generation is where caregivers are caught between caring for their older, elderly family members and their young families. And that was my life for many years. When my wife and I were just starting to have our own kids, that's unfortunately when my parents and eventually my uncle also needed more and more care and support from our family. I was like you, Selma. I was a long distance caregiver. I was kind of almost in the middle of where my uncle lived in Connecticut and my mom lived down in Pennsylvania, about 2.5 hours in between both of them. And so I was torn between going to visit my mom one weekend. Should I go visit her next weekend, or do I need to go see my uncle? How about I spend time with my kids? That sandwich generation is constantly that pull and tug and struggling to figure out where do they spend their time, who's the priority, what am I doing? And I think it's really, you have to do it on a day-to-day basis based on whose needs are the greatest that day or that weekend, because it's really hard to pick and choose who you want to see, because you want to see them all and you want to be there for them all, but it's impossible to do that. So, and that's why it's so important to figure out that circle of care and really understand, who can I get to help with my kids, maybe who can help with my uncle if I can't be there. The same with my mom. It's that support network is critical.
Wow. It's kind of like a caregiver triage. You got to decide who needs you the most at that point in time. So when you were doing this and managing, caring for your mom, your uncle, you had the small kids, you're a father, a husband, were you working as well? And if so, did you share this with your employer, and were they supportive?
Yeah, so on top of being a caregiver, like so many, I was a working caregiver too, right? Working a full-time job, very demanding job. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry at a large pharma company in Connecticut. I will have to say they had very progressive benefits and support for employees who were facing challenging, family demands. So, they offered medical leave if you needed it. I never had to take a leave, but I definitely took advantage of their generous vacation time and paid holiday time. So I tapped into that a lot, because I think a lot of employees, for whatever reason, they leave a lot of unused vacation time on the table. Why do they do that? Use it, take that advantage to spend that time with your family and your kids, because they need you there in person. They need your time. And so the employees, if they're offering it to you, take advantage of it and use that vacation time as much as possible.
Wow, that's great. That's good advice. Did you share that with your employer, that you were a caregiver?
In my job, I did decide to share that information with my supervisor. I was very fortunate. I had a great manager. She was very supportive of what I was going through. She gave me the flexibility to work from home on Fridays, or even other days in the week where I really just needed to be home for my family. And so I know this is a tough issue for a lot of employees. They're not sure if they should disclose this. Should they keep it private? And it's a personal decision, and I respect that. In my situation, I was able to disclose this to my supervisor. She was a partner in helping me figure out the best way to manage some of the challenges and demands of caregiving.
So just curious, was the fact that they had such liberal benefits in terms of time off and so forth, was that influential in making you feel comfortable enough to share with your manager?
I don't think it really had much of an impact, Selma, no.
Well, I'd like to actually delve into something that was influential, and that is your advocacy for caregiving. What has really, in your opinion, influenced you? Because you're a fantastic writer. You've written so much about health and the caregiving world. And so what drives you to write all this, or what has driven you to write all this?
Zach, I've been really blessed to have a lot of opportunities to speak to caregivers over the years, and they constantly inspire me every day with their stories and their courage and their dedication to their work. And, I have had the opportunity to write about caregiving for many years now, not only for Brain and Life magazine, but also now for AARP, even U.S. News and World Report. I have interviewed countless caregivers over the years that are so selfless, and just give so much of themselves to the work that they're asked to do. And I think also, there's important opportunity to represent more of the male caregiver voices out there. There's obviously a lot of male caregivers that are doing this work, especially for their wives. And I think they don't often get the credit or speak up about the work that they're doing. And so I also think it's important, as another male caregiver, to represent that community. I mean, we'll never be the largest part of the caregiving community. Women are natural caregivers, and that will never change. But I do think males are stepping up more and more. They just don't talk about it. And they also don't show up as much in support groups. You don't see them talking at caregiver conferences as much. They're just a little quieter about the work that they're doing, but they're out there and there's millions of them.
On behalf of caregivers all over the country, and we're up to about 63 million, according to the most recent report, we thank you, Paul, for these conversations that you write about, but also that you're having. And the fact that you spoke to your own manager, I think, opened up opportunities and doors, just like all these interviews that you're having. You're getting a lot of great stories, just like we're hearing yours, and we're going to get into it in a minute about your stories that you wrote in your book. Those do open doors. On that note, I mean, have you heard some good things that maybe employers can be doing to support caregivers? Have some of these stories revealed any of that to you, or what is your research telling you as far as what we could tell our listeners, or who, by the way, are employers, leaders, HR managers?
Yeah, I mean, listening to you and Selma talk about all the initiatives that are happening out there is definitely a great starting point. What I'm also hearing is that more and more employees are starting to think about really the impact on their workforce. They're starting to realize that a majority of their workforce are caregivers. And what does that mean? That means that they're being pulled in a million directions and juggling all their work responsibilities and their family responsibilities. It's just too much. It's causing burnout on both ends. And so proactive, progressive employers, I think, are starting to realize this is a bigger and bigger segment of their workforce, and they're starting to put in more benefits, more opportunities to give them that flexibility that they need in order to juggle both roles.
Just one last question, Paul, and that's very encouraging, by the way, because we certainly need it in terms of employers stepping up. And it doesn't just fall on employers' shoulders, right? This is society, this is government as well as family members. But what about in a scenario where an employee is not as comfortable as you were when you went and spoke to your manager? What suggestions would you have for an employee to kind of be more visible and speak up in the purpose of getting more benefit or getting more support? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I would say, have conversations with your fellow employees. I mean, just like you and Selma, you guys bonded over the fact that you were caregivers in the workforce. And so I think finding some, comrades, who are also going through this, maybe not the employer's benefits are going to change, but just to find other people that can relate to you in the employee setting, I think makes a huge difference for you. And I think, also talking to your HR manager, again, it's not for everybody. For many, it's a real personal decision. But, at HR, they are supposed to keep all those conversations private and anonymous. So if you do feel comfortable, talk to the HR manager, see maybe there's benefits that you don't even know about. I mean, and that's so possible, because some of those HR policies are like hidden in some, black book, on the shelf, and they don't really talk about them.
Yeah.
Talk to the HR manager. Maybe there's a little wiggle room that's not even on paper that they would give you just to be more flexible with all the demands in your life.
Great suggestions. I really like that, especially about speaking to your peers, because I'll never forget when a millennial caregiver spoke about how she joined a caregiver group and felt completely uncomfortable because nobody had anything in common with her. Whereas when you're at your workplace, you at least have that in common already. You have an employer, a common employer. You have common work or other things like that. At least that's a step forward. It'll make you more comfortable to share. So I like that. Great idea, Paul. Thank you.
So if we can we just move to your chapter in the book, Caregivers Advocate Volume 2, and your chapter, Surviving the Sandwich Generation Years. I love how you started out. The first sentence of that chapter captivated me and just made me want to read the rest of it, which says, when it's your turn to be a caregiver, Whose example will you follow? I love that. When it's your turn, it kind of speaks to, what the late Rosalind Carter said. We're all going to get a turn. So can you just expand on that a little bit and share why you started out with that powerful statement?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had several amazing family members who, just truly inspired me by their selflessness when they were caring for other family members. I think to my aunts and uncles who cared for my grandparents, they did it without hesitation, with so much love. And I was really blessed. I didn't even really realize it at the moment when I saw my mom caring for my grandmother with just so much ease. It just was so natural for that generation back then to take care of the older family members. I didn't appreciate it back then, but I certainly do now. And it was my turn to take care of my mom. I was like, well, I guess I'll just follow her role model. And she was just the amazing person, so selfless and so patient, and never complained. And I'm not saying that's perfect either, because sometimes it's kind of good to get it off your chest a little bit and vent about some of the challenges that you're facing. I'm not sure if I follow that perfect role model with my mom. She was really a saint when it came to that. But I do think I was lucky that I had so many good people in my family to follow in their footsteps. And so that when, it was my turn, it came very easy to me. It really was just a natural progression in how families care for each other. It was just challenging because my own family, my kids were just so young at the time. And so there was, I didn't have teenage kids. We're talking, little peanuts running around in the backyard, wanting, mom and dad's attention, and they wanted to play with us every moment. So, I loved that time in my life, but it also was just challenging to also balance the needs of the elderly family members. But like I said in my chapter, this point in your life, for some, it may last for a long time, but it also is a moment in time, and my parents, my uncle, they've passed on. My kids, they're all growing up, so it's a moment in time. Enjoy it while it lasts. I look back at those years. I'm not sure how I got through them, but I did. And I appreciate everything, all the experiences that I had. I don't regret any moments that I did. I wish I could have been there more for them, but again, we're only human. We can only do as much as possible. And I think we also have to give ourselves a little grace that way too.
Absolutely. And let go of the guilt, especially as a long distance caregiver. There's guilt of not necessarily being at that place at the time that, something happens. And there's some guilt that goes with that. And it took me a while to process that as well. And let go of it and replace it with grace.
That's right.
And I got to say, Paul, I really appreciate the emotion I'm sensing from you, as well as the emotion I read. And I'm not going to give it all away because our listeners need to definitely read your book that you're a part of. And Selma, my partner, also is an author of. And we'll put the links in there. But just the way you described happy hours and peach schnapps with Nana, the emotion, I'm sensing it right now from you. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, because that is what will help others relate and talk more about their journeys. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also, in your book, you lay out some strategies. And if you could share a couple of those with us, because I found those really insightful and very helpful as well.
Yeah. So, in my chapter, I outline a few strategies that those in the sandwich generation may want to consider in order to try to find the right balance between caring for your older family members and your young family. But, one of the key things I think they should consider is try to find ways to unite both generations together. Don't keep the older family members who may be in nursing homes in a little silo, in a little bubble where only, they don't ever get to see, the young kids anymore. try to find ways to unite them together. The kids bring such joy to the older family members. And it's also important for the younger kids to see what's happening to grandma. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you explain it correctly and you understand and you give them a little bit of explanation before you show up, I think that's only benefits them because it's part of life. And we shouldn't hide our older family members in nursing homes. We should embrace them. We should include them as much as possible. So I think uniting the generations, it brings joy to everybody, and it also has good experience that everyone benefits from.
Yeah. And one of the strategies which really stuck out for me as well is as you talk about asking for help. And that is really a very difficult thing to do for most people, because we think we can handle it all. But you talk about not being Superman. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Another strategy that I outlined in my chapter was really asking for help when you need it. I know this does not come easy to a lot of caregivers. They think they can take it on all themselves. They think they're superhuman, but it's so important for everyone, especially caregivers, to ask for help. And I'm talking to all the male caregivers out there right now too. Don't assume that just by asking for help means you're weak. It's actually a sign of strength when you ask for help. And be specific when you ask for help. Don't just generally say, I really could use help this weekend. Explain to whoever you're asking for some support, whether it's another family member, a neighbor, or friend, or someone from church. I really could use, help, picking up some groceries for, my uncle. Could you, pick up, Sally from her softball game? Be really specific and detailed about the kind of support you need so that they know how to support and help you. Otherwise, they're going to just be like, well, I want to help, but I just don't know how to help. I don't know how I can be, beneficial to my friend who's, raising their hand at me like, help, the house is on fire. So I think that being specific, I think, can really make a difference.
Great. Yes. So we'll let that be. We don't want to go into too many more strategies because we want our audience to pick up the book and read the chapter and get the benefit of all that you have to offer, which you want to our listeners. You will not be disappointed. It's a great
Absolutely.
chapter. Very, very resourceful.
I do want to comment on one though, Selma, and the generational bringing them together. I have to say, that's the first time I actually have read that, and it makes so much sense. I ran a home care agency for 13 years, and I would see people intentionally keep generations away from each other, as you said, Paul. And I want to shout out to Stacy Shuey. She has an organization called Hands for Life, and she's creating assisted livings in other countries like Africa. And she intentionally is bringing young children, like foster children with elderly individuals who don't have families, bringing them together to co-inhabitate. It's just powerful how much they learn from each other, the generations, and how fulfilling that is for their lives. I mean, I think that's fantastic. And you made a point of that with your own son and your father in the room. And I think that's really powerful. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. I do want, one of our favorite questions to ask is always, with all this wealth of experience that you have and lived experiences, if you were to go back to the beginning, like you were, I think, married only 1 year, and then you're taking care of your father. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So if you were to go back to, let's just say the year you were married, you haven't really fallen into the caregiving role yet. This is especially for sandwich generation folks. Please listen in. What advice would you give Paul if you could go back in time and share with all that you know now?
Yeah, I would. There's a lot that I would redo.
So that's a new book, right? That's a new book.
If I could go back in time, I would definitely try to find a book like the Caregivers Advocate Volume 2 to read other people's stories, learn from their experiences, understand what you could do differently as a caregiver. I would absolutely join a support group. Now, I think sometimes it can be challenging to find a support group where you feel like you fit in. And if I'm a guy in my mid 30s trying to find a support group with other peers, it might be challenging. I'm not going to lie, but you got to keep trying. You got to keep looking for support groups where you feel like you're going to connect with others. And I think that can make a huge difference in the trajectory of your caregiving. I think it not only supports your mental and emotional stability, but I think it also gives you a lot of good ideas that you just would never have thought of on your own, because in most cases, we're all just learning as we go. We're learning on the job. So who better to learn from but other caregivers doing the exact same thing you're doing? So I would definitely recommend reading, doing support groups. And then the third thing I would have said is, I wish I had also gone to a conference. I wish I would have met people in person. I'm an outgoing guy. I'm extrovert, so I feed off of other people's energy. So I would have really enjoyed meeting people in person, hearing their stories, learning from them. Maybe your best friend is waiting out there for you in a support group or a caregiving conference, and you don't even know it because you haven't tried. And so I would recommend all three of those things if I had to do it all over again.
That's awesome. That's fantastic reflection. I'm going to put you on a spot, though. One more thing let's add to that list, and that's podcasts. You wrote a great article. We'll put a link in it in our show notes about great podcasts in the caregiver space. So which one's your favorite podcast, Paul?
Besides this one?
Besides this one. All right, we'll let you off the hook. Give us your top three that our listeners, if they don't have a lot of time, because I agree with you, having this resource it would have been very helpful for me back in 2007. Trust me, in 2006. So, but if you were to give away three top podcasts that our listeners could maybe check out if they have enough time for three, what would you suggest off the top of your head?
If I had to redo my caregiving years, I definitely would have tuned into podcasts. The problem is, back when I was caregiving, there were no podcasts.
Oh, that was true.
That was not a thing back then, because this was all pre-COVID. So maybe, but there wasn't even like really radio shows, focused on caregiving back then. So, this is a new opportunity for caregivers actively doing it right now. There's so many more resources and virtual resources that they can tap into to help bolster their confidence, to learn from others, to feel supported emotionally, mentally, to help you through some of those dark days when caregiver burnout really starts to set in. And it's going to set in at some point. We all get tired. We all get overwhelmed, and we don't even know how to move forward or how to figure it out the next day. So I think these podcasts, these support groups, conferences, books, all of this, it just all supports the caregiving community. And I think we're richer for it.
And we're going to let you off the hook. You're right. There's actually too many to name, but those are some great points. And I will say that the greatest benefit I've had from listening to podcasts is the vulnerability that people are more comfortable to share.
Yeah.
And that does help me open up and talk more about my own caregiving experiences. So you're right. Those are great to have those folks in our ears. I hope podcasters keep doing it because we need you. Thank you.
Yeah. As Zach mentioned, or actually, I think, Paul, you mentioned this at the beginning of our show today. If Zach and I hadn't opened up and talked to each other about our caregiving experiences, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you and have this show and this business. So it's really important. It really is. And we suggest people try it. Just try it out and see what you think.
Yep.
But in closing, we want to know or share with our audience how people can get connected with you, Paul, and how they can find those great articles that you've written and take a look at your chapter and so forth.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is through my website. It's very simple, paulwynn.com. You'll have little information about my work as a patient advocacy consultant, as a co-author to the Caregivers Advocate Volume 2, and all my contact information is on there, including my LinkedIn profile. So check it out. Check out the stories I've written. Check out the book, please, if you want to. It's available on Amazon.com, or
Yes.
full copies are also available through my website. So I hope you'll check it out. Because there's a lot of great resources, a lot of good chapters that you'll learn from.
Everybody hold their book up.
Selma autographed her chapter. Are you going to autograph your chapter for me, Paul? I hope.
I would love to.
I'll come up and catch a game with you. Which, by the way, just a little trivia on the side. We actually lost our, I think he was a Cub Scout at the time, one of our Cub Scouts when we were there for a football game. But we found him about 10 minutes later. That was panicky. But other than that, I agree with you. The Army and Navy game, was it Army Navy? Yeah, that was just amazing to watch at West Point. Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, I still go over there for Scout Day at West Point games.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's been wonderful chatting with you, and thank you for your wonderful insights. And we totally appreciate the advocacy work and the writing that you do to enlighten us all. So thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you for being a co-author along with me in the Caregivers Advocate Volume 2. It was really awesome to be part of this project with you. So
it was great fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you both, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to catch new episodes of Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast, every other Tuesday. Please also visit our website, invisibleemployeeadvocates.com, to subscribe to our newsletter, purchase our book, and learn more about how we can help you strengthen your workplace to become more supportive of working caregivers.